one of the important things if you're going to be flying a drone, even if it's just recreationally or commercially, and part of your registration process, and if you're flying recreationally, you have something called a trust test that you have to take. And one of the things there are certain restricted areas where we can and we cannot fly. So the drones have a ceiling of 400 feet they can't fly above. Aircraft have a floor of 500 feet. So it gives us a 100-foot buffer of safety there. And now the exception to that is when airplanes are taking off or landing, right, near airports. So if we're within 5 miles of an airport, we have to get permission to fly the drone from air traffic control. Just like any aircraft flying, when they get anywhere within 5 miles of an airport, or usually a lot farther than that, they're communicating with air traffic control so they know where they are and everyone knows what's going on with everything. So the good news is for us drone pilots, there are some apps where we can get basically instantaneous approval. We just click a few buttons and it will give you instantaneous approval to fly. Now, oftentimes, depending how close you are to the airport, your ceiling might not be 400, it might only be 200 or 100 feet. But you know at least what that is and what you're authorized to fly. And it's super important because that's legal. You have to be legal to be able to do that. It's just like in a construction zone. It might normally be 60 miles an hour, but the construction zone's 35. You have to pay attention to and abide by those rules. Or people could get hurt or even die or something like that. Same thing with the air. So when there are any restrictions in the air, now it's not just around airports, it's also around military bases, it's around government offices, it's around stadiums. And then there are these things called TFRs, temporary flight restrictions. And they're rare when they come up, but they do come up. And again, it's your responsibility to be able to find out if there's a TFR. Now, the good news is a lot of these apps, they pull this data up. And so you just have to glance at them before your flight. It's part of your pre-flight checklist. One thing that I recommend every drone pilot get in the habit of doing their pre-flight checklist. Almost every accident I've seen has been a direct result of somebody skipping their pre-flight checklist. And they missed something or something that was on a pre-flight checklist they would have caught and it would have prevented the accident. But people are like, well, I only do my pre-flight checklist if I'm on a commercial shoot, or I only do it if the wind's this, or I only do it if that's kind of like, well, I only put my seatbelt on if I'm going over 100 miles an hour, or I only, so you just need to get in the habit of doing it every time. If you get in the habit of doing it every time, it sucks in the beginning because it takes you a couple of minutes to do it. But once you get in the habit of doing it every single time, just like you get in the car and you put your seatbelt on every time, you don't even think about it. If you get in the habit of doing it, then it takes usually less than a minute. And part of your pre-flight checklist is checking the airspace and knowing what's available there. And what happens if you don't, like there was an incident in California at the beginning of 2025 where you had the Palisade fires and a drone didn't check. There was a TFR, of course, because anytime you have an emergency like that, a TFR, when they do a flight restriction, is usually an emergency of some kind. So they close the airspace down to keep anyone from flying there. In this case of a fire, forest fires or wildfires, you have emergency aircraft that are flying below that 500 feet. Now they have authorization to fly there. If there's a TFR, it doesn't mean you can't fly. It just means you have to have permission to fly. And you're not going to get granted that one button, just automatic permission in a TFR. But you can do it. I've been part of search and rescue operations, and we can fly in TFRs. You just have to get special permission for it. And again, it's not super hard, but it can be done. But this particular pilot didn't know any better. He didn't bother to check, and he broke several laws. He flew beyond line of sight, which you can't do, where you fly beyond what you can physically see the drone with your eyes. And then he flew in a TFR. So he broke two laws there. And then he had a midair collision with a super scooper aircraft, a firefighting aircraft, and it punched a giant hole in the wing. And when they had to land the aircraft, and they grounded it for like 7 days. And this was absolute worst timing because they only had two of these airplanes, and these airplanes could basically put out more fires than any other one piece of equipment that they had. And one of them was now taken out because of a $600 drone someone bought at Costco and just thought it was a toy and ignored the rules. And, who knows how many millions of dollars of damage and potentially how many lives that cost because of that. And then there was a tragedy in Kerrville, Texas, with the floods where the Guadalupe River, which is normally it's got 1 foot of water in it, and it rose to 34 feet in just a matter of hours. And it was a tragedy. Over 95 people died and counting. Again, in the aftermath of this, drones were doing all kinds of great things. They're mapping out areas for first responders and rescue personnel, so they can find out what's passable, what's good, where can they go, where can't they go. Search and rescue, finding people, finding animals, finding livestock that survived. One thermal drone was able to find a family that was trapped in their attic as the water's rising, and they were able to pinpoint them. They got the thermal print through the roof of the people in the attic, and first responders were able to get there, rescuers, and rescue them and save them. So lots of benefits, but there were also people that were flying without permission, without authorization, and one of them had a collision with an aircraft, a rescue aircraft, which is now grounded that aircraft. We'll see what the ramifications of that are. The whole point of this is highly regulated, and you need to be respectful of the rules and understand how to use them. And the great news is we've got this amazing technology, so it's easier than ever to check. You don't have to call ATC and find out what's going on. You can actually just pull up apps and get all this information. But again, people don't know what they don't know. So it's important that if you're going to be operating aircraft in national airspace, you at least take a little time to educate yourself on what you need to know. And that's where part of the licensing process comes from. If you're operating it commercially, you're held to a higher standard, and there's more that goes into it to get your license. But again, not a whole lot. It's something that you can do, and you can study in just a couple days and pass your test for that. But if you are just operating recreationally and you have no intention of making money or doing anything with it, you just want to fly for fun, you still have to register your drone in most cases, and you do have to do your trust test to at least educate yourself on what you need to know, and then get the resources so you can do it. Hey, thanks for watching. Be sure and click the button below to subscribe, and be sure and hit the thumbs up button. All right, for more free resources to help you build your drone business, visit thedroneboss.com in our resources section. To fast track your success, be sure to check out our 3-day live total immersion event at Drone Command Live. You can click somewhere around here or below in the description. All right, take care and fly safe.